Rob, thanks for doing this. Really enjoyed leading up to the draft, having a conversation. I thought that we would put a conclusion to this thing, talk about what the Bears did. 5 picks in all. GM Ryan Poles, I don't think he's worried too much about the grades outside of the building. I think they have really, really high grades on themselves from inside the building, which I think they should have. Let's run through them a little bit. Caleb Williams, a ceiling and a floor for you of what Caleb Williams could become in the NFL.
I think to start off with the floor, I think I certainly expect him to come in to the NFL and start immediately and have success as far as showing the accuracy expected of a starting NFL quarterback, showing the arm strength, the playmaking ability, and guiding the Bears to at least similar type of wins and losses of what we saw with the predecessor, Justin Fields. I think that's the floor. Ceiling, I think we're talking about the best young quarterback in the NFC, very similar to what we saw C.J. Stroud do with the Houston Texans a year ago and guiding Chicago to a return to the postseason and can quite possibly going for Offensive Rookie of the Year honors, especially considering the skill position talent that he has around him in Chicago. Of course, all the buzz of being the number one overall selection and some defenses in the NFC North that, frankly, I think that Chicago has the best defense in the NFC North. And so I think that it's something that he should be able to take advantage of.
A friend of yours, Eric Williams, he comped Caleb Williams to Donovan McNabb. He didn't want to put Patrick Mahomes on him, which with the career that Patrick Mahomes is having, that makes sense. What do you make of that comp, Caleb Williams to Donovan McNabb?
I think it's a good one. One of the things I really liked about Donovan McNabb, as well as obviously all the physical attributes, the arm strength, the agility, the maneuverability in the pocket, was the leadership. I was able to talk to some scouts who were helping out during the Donovan McNabb's workout in Indianapolis all those years ago. And he just kind of talked about how Donovan McNabb was truly the leader among men of the quarterbacks in that group. And of course, there were a lot of quarterbacks that were selected early that year. And there were some fairly notable busts of that quarterback group. With Caleb Williams, of course, that's been one of the things that people have questioned so much is does he have the pure leadership ability that that you're expecting? So that would be the one thing that I would kind of push back a little bit on. But I think in terms of physical comparisons, I think that there's actually there's a lot that is comparable between Caleb Williams and Don McNabb. And actually, I think in a way, it actually is not reflective enough of Caleb Williams' arm talent. I think that Caleb Williams is a better passer at this point. Of course, we've all heard the Patrick Mahomes comparisons, and I've always struggled with that just because Mahomes is seems like one of one. But again, I don't know that there's a perfect comparison for Caleb Williams, but I do think that he is a better passer right now than Don McNabb was when he entered the NFL. I just want to see him demonstrate the same type of leadership that I think that Don McNabb showed throughout his NFL career.
Yeah, I'm sure Bears fans are thinking, well, we're hoping for a lot better than Donovan McNabb. Let's not forget, I believe McNabb went to 5 consecutive NFC championship games with the Philadelphia Eagles, although they did not win one. In your backyard, you're there in Seattle, Roman Odunze at number 9. It was someone that you mentioned the last time that we talked. What did you make of that selection by the Bears with that pick and then pairing him with Caleb Williams?
That's one of the things I'm most excited about from a Chicago Bears perspective is that, for one, the Bears didn't panic. I think they recognized that there was 3 elite wide receivers and that they would be fortunate if any one of the 3 happened to fall into their lap at number 9. And, of course, Odunze did. And I think that he is the best fit for them just because of his size and his relative strength in comparison to what you already have in a DJ Moore and a Keenan Allen. DJ Moore, in my opinion, just his speed, his aggression, his ability to make people miss after the catch, that to me just makes him a very special player, but also one who was at his best deep downfield or in the very short type of area, like in screens and things like that. Keenan Allen, from my money, is about as good of a slot receiver as the NFL has ever seen. I think I'm just head over heels in love with Keenan Allen's game. Have been ever since I read years ago that that Nick Saban, when he was trying to recruit him to Alabama, wanted him to play safety. That just kind of gives you an idea about the physicality and just the mindset, the intensity with which Keenan Allen plays. And of course, we all know all the success that he had with the Chargers. With Rome Odunze, because he's the height that he is, has a straight line speed that he has, and then is as good when the ball is in the air as he is. He's a very different type of a wide receiver. So I just feel like the Chicago Bears now have like kind of a Baskin Robbins type of pick your own flavor that is going to just allow Caleb Williams to hit the ground running that much more. And while I do, and others as well, have some reservations about Caleb Williams' leadership ability right now, I do not have those reservations about Rome Odunze. To me, he is as polished off the field as he is on it. And I really think that he is a really nice complement to Caleb Williams. Both of them, of course, playing in the Pac-12, know each other very well. Just watching from afar throughout the draft coverage, it felt like they had kind of an instant kinship. And so I think that is going to be something that is going to help Caleb Williams stay on the straight and narrow, so to speak. I think help him be the best version of himself. And so, again, I just think that it's a perfect pairing, Rome Odunze and Caleb Williams.
All right. So, by the way, I agree. It did seem immediate from a friendship standpoint. It'll be interesting to see if it's immediate on the field with that connection as well. In the third round, Kiran Amegadjie, local product out of Hinsdale from Yale, the offensive lineman. I don't know much about him. I think he was injured as well in his 2023 season. What have you seen from Amegadjie?
Just the length and the athleticism. Anytime you have an Ivy League player, obviously the level of competition is going to be the question. And of course, the medical situation didn't allow him to participate in the All-Star games or the workout sessions and things like that. But the athletic ability, just the light feet, the ability to move in space, the physicality, at least at the level that he played at, was just off the charts. I think, I personally viewed him as a second-round player. Just because of the upside that I believe that he possesses. I think that he can walk in and compete for meaningful snaps at the left tackle position, which for a lot of Bears fans is a position of concern. And so I just view him as being a guy that has the long-term potential to easily justify where the Bears select him. And as you mentioned, he's a relatively local product as well. And Caleb Williams is used to being hit. He was sacked an awful lot at USC. And so I think that he is a quarterback who is a little bit better prepared to handle running for his life at times than some of the other quarterbacks who were selected after him that maybe have had a little bit more durability concerns and things like that. So I think that we're talking about a player that has such an incredible upside that it wound up being one of my absolute favorite selections this entire draft class, not only for Chicago, but for anybody all throughout the NFL.
What did you make of the Bears going with a punter, Tory Taylor out of Iowa, in the fourth round?
It did surprise me that to see Taylor go in the fourth round. I personally thought it would have been more the fifth to sixth round. But at the same time, I get it. This is a draft class, and a lot of people have talked about this, but because of the NIL and the transfer policy, there were just significantly fewer underclassmen that came out. So this was a draft class that just wasn't quite as deep as what we've seen. So if you had a player that you really liked, and Chicago clearly really liked Taylor, then go get him. It just made sense. And so I thought that was a position of concern for the Bears. Again, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say, or if I said that I didn't think that it was a bit of a reach. But I also think that he is a player that should have a very long career in the NFL. And so I think that ultimately it's going to wind up being a smart selection. I know that, as you mentioned, Seattle's basically in my backyard. The Seahawks years ago used a fifth-round selection on their punter, and he wound up now has been a multiple Pro Bowler. And so I think that now people look back on that and they kind of scoff at the selection when it was first made. But now that he's been a multiple Pro Bowler for them, nobody's laughing about it at this point. I think it makes actually a lot of sense to make that type of a selection, especially when you have a relatively weak class like this one is.
Yeah, you mentioned NIL. Ryan Poles used a lot of this draft for veterans. Now, Montez Sweat, a little bit different as a second rounder, but Keenan Allen in the fourth round, Ryan Bates was a trade to bring in the fifth round. But Ryan Poles did want to get one more pick in, so made a trade to get in the fifth round. Austin Bishop, edge rusher out of Kansas. What can you tell us about him?
A good player, a player that I was much higher on than apparently a lot of the NFL teams were. I actually had him going in the second to third round, and to have him be available much, much later than that to Chicago, to me, makes an awful lot of sense. I just see a player that, originally was at Minnesota, of course, a couple of years there and wound up transferring to Kansas and was the Big 12 defensive newcomer of the year. His initial burst and length is just a really intriguing combination. There are some snaps where he is not quite as physical at the point of attack as you'd like. So I think that he is definitely a developmental prospect. But at the same time, he is much more athletic than the 40-yard dash, which I believe was in the 4.7s, would suggest. This is a guy who's quick off the snap, really understands how to get to the outside shoulder of offensive tackles, and then uses a jab step and a counter back inside, as well as some of the edge rushers that I saw come off the board in the first and second round. So again, I'm a big fan of Austin Booker. I really think that he is a player that is going to wind up making Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus look really smart down the road.
Rob, the lore of the Bears, the history of the Bears has been mainly all about the defensive side of the ball. You felt like potentially 2024 draft and moving forward that things could change, by the way, as it should, as the rules of the game has changed. I think the first defensive player this year in the draft went number 15, right? The edge rusher out of UCLA. Shane Waldron will be expected to somewhat get that all started as the Bears being thought of as an offensive juggernaut and not a history of defensive players. You've watched a lot of Shane Waldron football there in Seattle. How do you expect him to put Caleb Williams in a place to succeed? And also, how do you expect him to potentially not get greedy with the guy named DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet, and others potentially?
That's a great question as far as how do you not get greedy? Because I think that Chicago has such an embarrassment of riches at pass catcher now. You just mentioned them all by name. And that, I think, is going to be part of the challenge. Is from my experience with Shane Waldron is that he is aggressive. He is going to want to attack. And when you have a quarterback as gifted as Caleb Williams, then that, to me, is going to be part of the issue. I think that what helps is that you have a Chicago Bears defense that I think that ever since the trade for the pass rusher a year ago, Montez Sweat, that really resurrected that Chicago defense. I know that I had a lot of conversations with folks heading into this draft that were arguing that the Bears might be somebody that maybe went with that UCLA pass rusher, Leatu Latu, or a Dallas Turner, because they would cite Chicago's fairly middling sack numbers a year ago. But I think that once you got Montez Sweat really kind of honed in on what that the Bears were doing, then you could just see the difference in that defense. Because they have the quality defense, or at least I believe that they're going to have a quality defense. And I think that's going to be one of the things that just kind of slows Shane Waldron and Caleb Williams down. I mean, let's, go back to USC a year ago. USC, with all due respect to Lincoln Riley and USC Trojans, that was not a very good USC defense. And so I think that there were times that Caleb Williams basically felt that he had to play hero ball if he was going to keep the Trojans in games. I don't think that he's going to feel that way so much this year. So I do think that what you're going to see Shane Waldron, I expect to see him do, is to take advantage of what makes Caleb Williams special. There's going to be a lot of quick passes that just take advantage of his ability to read defenses, his accuracy, again, all of the different pass catchers that the Chicago Bears have, and then occasionally put him on the rollouts and bootlegs and allow him just to scan the field and to allow veteran receivers like a Keenan Allen, for example, who, again, I think recognizes where defenders are, guys that if they get the ball in their hands, it can make somebody miss and take it to the house, like a DJ Moore. And then, if nothing else, just throw the ball up to your fellow rookie in Rome Odunze and allow him to play that 50-50 ball as well as any receiver in this draft class. So, by the way, Cole Kmet, arguably one of the best young tight ends in all of the league. again, I think that this really is set up nicely for Caleb Williams to come in and Shane Waldron as well to come in and have immediate success in Chicago.
Yeah, she also mentioned Gerald Everett as well, in
Yeah.
addition there in that passing game. Gino Smith was a resurrection, right? What garnered so much praise for Shane Waldron and towards Gino Smith as well, because you don't often see that in the NFL. You're kind of moved to that clipboard guy. You usually remain that clipboard guy. Very different with Caleb Williams. He's going to come in as a true rookie and asked to go win football games. But can we find a comparison at all between what Shane Waldron helped Geno Smith become and a similar situation he may try to put Caleb Williams in?
I think that there is a parallel. And, one of the knocks on Geno Smith, it was never about arm talent. It was never about leadership or agility or any of those kind of physical traits. It was that he was almost too much of a gunslinger. And he would put the ball in harm's way. And Caleb Williams' accuracy is kind of speaks for itself. But the fumbles definitely was an area of concern at USC. And again, I think that kind of goes back to that hero ball mentality that he didn't have enough people around him to make big plays, so it was kind of on him. That's where I think that Shane Waldron and Matt Eberflus have to just make sure that they kind of can harness Caleb Williams' natural eagerness to live up to all this hype as the number one overall selection. He's going to want to make every big play. But I think that it would be good for Caleb Williams to see the Bears win a game 15-12 or something like that, relatively early in the season, where maybe they don't spring for 4 or 5 touchdowns, that they have to play some field goal kind of football and be able to win on the strength of their defense, not just on Caleb Williams throwing that game-winning touchdown kind of thing. I do believe that the NFC North is tough enough that they're going to have some very tough games early on. And I think that as long as the Bears are able to coax out some victories there, then that is going to help Caleb Williams grow and Shane Williams develop his confidence in his young quarterback.
Well, here in Chicago, I feel the same as Bears fans. And okay, well, we always feel this way about the NFL. The ratings bear it out, but the season cannot get here soon enough to see what this all looks like. Rob, I appreciate your draft covers. Thanks so much for your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.